Are live in 3, 2, 1. Roll the footage. Welcome back, everybody, to the Strategy Sprints podcast. I'm Severino, your host, and my guest today is an entrepreneur who has started, run, grown, turned around, purchased, and sold a bunch of companies. Currently, he's the CEO of an early stage biotech company in the neurodegeneration space, and he's one of the founders of a life science angel investor group, the Mid-Atlantic Bio Angels, MABA. Welcome, everybody. Yaniv Sneor.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Thank you, Simon. Thanks for having me.
So cool to have you here. And we will talk both continuous improvement and constant change and many more things. So I'm excited. So what are you currently creating?
So I'm currently working on my company. It's called Native State Therapeutics. We're in slow stages of very, very early stages of doing some very early research, very exciting research. We're trying to get it funded and doing some research, but I think we're doing well. Also working on creating and growing and improving my life science angel investor group, which you mentioned, MABA, Mid-Atlantic Bio Angels, and we invest in therapeutics, devices, diagnostics. Mostly, I like to call it sort of the deep space of the life sciences. This is a group that we've created more than 8 years ago and is continuously evolving. So those are things I'm working on mostly.
Beautiful. And so what were some recent moments in your research that were exciting to you?
So, in research, I believe that you want to try to, if you do fail, you want to fail early and cheap. And, so far we haven't failed. So that's good. We've been doing some research. We've had some assumptions. We have been able to move forward with those. And so far, everything that we predicted is working. So I'm very, very happy about that. You never know, especially in the life sciences. It's a high risk, big failure area. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed, but so far it's so good.
We are all about how can we improve testing our assumptions. So right now in our programs, we have this XYZ hypothesis way that we learn from Google, and we write down everything numeric, try to not to test more than 3 days to make it very small. So we're always curious. How do successful people invalidate their assumptions? Do you have a specific process that you use?
Yeah, I mean, in general, when you run a company, you believe in testing and creating as many metrics as possible and constantly testing, and then and I think being honest with yourself about what the results are, and being honest with the people around you what those results are. And then testing again, and to see the results that you get, are they contextual, and are they meaningful in terms of what you're getting? And maybe you need to look at other numbers, or maybe you need to position things in a different way. But I think you constantly have to put out their assumptions and things that you're testing, and constantly go back. And it is a process. And that's one of the things sort of when you started talking about process of continuous improvement. I think it's always a process. It's not static. And I think we fail if we think that things are static. We should also always recognize the fact that a business is a live thing, and you honor it by realizing that it's a live thing that continues to evolve. And it's your job, sort of as the CEO, as the person who's running it, to figure out where it wants to evolve to, where your customers are taking it, where your employees are taking it, what the winds of change are, how they're blowing. And you have to continuously to evolve it, and you have to always be, putting together metrics, checking against them, and then getting the feedback and moving forward and implementing.
You are in a very exciting space, the deep tech, health tech space is a really exciting one. I have invested myself in Illumina and in CRISPR. I watch the space. I'm excited. I'm worried about the potential there. And I want to hear so much more from you. But first, one word from our sponsors.
Hey, if you love what you are hearing, you will love our free masterclasses. Go grab them at strategysprints.com.
So, what excites you about the MedTech space?
One of the advantages of the life science field is if you're successful, by definition, you're saving people's lives, or you're improving people's lives. So that's always a superb thing to be involved with. The other thing that I really like about the space is, it tends to self-select, and I sort of need to explain that. There are many areas where the barrier to entry, excuse me, every once in a while, my eyes over tear. So there are many areas where the barriers to entry are very low, and you end up with a lot of information, a lot of fluff. I don't know, for lack of a better word. But when you deal with life sciences, it requires so much knowledge to be involved in, to start a company. You can't start a life science company with enough beer and pizza over a weekend. And that self-selection process applies to the entrepreneurs as well as the investors and other people that you deal with in this industry. And so there is a sort of a built-in inherent level of maturity in the people that you deal with, that you start already from a different level in terms of entrepreneurship and discussion of business and discussion of opportunities. That's wonderful. So I find myself, I feel very lucky and very fortunate to be able to spend the time, with entrepreneurs that I think are wonderful, but also my colleagues at MABA are a group of wonderful individuals who are not only so incredibly accomplished and smart, but they're also very, very nice, and so it's really a wonderful environment to be talking about investments and the future of the life sciences. So I think it's a great place to be in.
Yeah, because you spend not just your business time, but your lifetime with them. So it's really important.
Yes.
I am I am excited to ask you, who do you nominate for the strategy award of all these entrepreneurs that you see? Who is somebody who, when everybody zigs, this person is zagging, but from your perspective, this person is doing the right thing?
So I was thinking about that, and I don't know if I can think of anybody contemporary, but I actually wanted to honor Tony C, who just died a couple of weeks ago. One of the things that he did always stuck with me as being very clever, where he offered people money to leave the company. And as somebody who's run companies, and when you think about what you do in terms of hiring people and how important it is, and the kind of mark that you leave on companies in terms of the character, that offer to say, if you understand that you don't belong in this culture and this culture isn't for you and you're not happy, here is money to leave and do us both a favor. I think it's a brilliant countercultural move, and I want to honor him with that and honor his memory, but and also say I think it's a great move.
Absolutely. And I'm super curious, what are the 3 books that shaped you most?
So I read that question when you sent it to me, and I really had a hard time with that, because especially as you and I talk about continuous change and continuous improvement, whatever it is, different books affect you at different times in your life differently. I mean, it's really, as an entrepreneur, and as a mentor, I find myself giving advice to people, and I think the advice that I give is probably the same advice as their other mentors are giving them at some point or another. But then for some reason, whether it's the day or the context of the experience of whatever's happening in their life, it sticks, it clicks, So it really is what you see when that sort of makes a difference for you. I mean, there are books that I read when I was a kid that I wouldn't necessarily think that they changed my life, but everything that you read deposits something in you, and you are a different person to have for having read it, you know. I mean, obviously there are books like The Power of Now that Eckhart Tolle, and Man's Search for Meaning for Viktor Frankl. But I've read other books before that, and I can't say that I've waited all my life to change. And I didn't do anything until I read Eckhart Tolle's book. I was ready for it, and it resonated with me because of wherever I was at that time in my life. So it's all contextual. It's whatever hits you when the iron happens to be hot.
Your CEO tip is we should both be improving constantly, but also radically changing. Can you unpack that?
I think that you have to recognize that everything is a dynamic structure, and support that structure, and help the business grow and evolve. The interesting thing, though, is I remember when I ran businesses with larger groups of employees. As much as I wanted to embrace change, the one thing I realized and I learned is that the word I can't use is change. It scares people radically. And I had to learn how to affect change without saying the word change, which is really curious kind of thing, because here I am, I just want to embrace it. Yeah, let's change, let's break everything and start new and do all these things. And everybody around me is scared.
Yeah.
And I can understand completely, for very good reasons. I don't blame anyone for that. But so I believe that, as a company, you have to embrace the fact that things do change. And if you get ahead of it, and if you recognize it, you can affect the kind of change that you want, or you can steer the ship in the direction that you think it should be going in. But at the same time, the people that you're leading, you have to be careful that they feel comfortable with that, with the pace and the direction and everything else, that you don't get too far ahead of them sometimes, that you're not in a little dinghy ahead of the ship somehow, and you're trying to carry the ship behind you, that everybody can change together, and yet you're embracing the natural evolution of the company and are able to be, replacing yourself before anybody else replaces you, because something is going to replace you at some point, and that you're constantly moving forward.
It's funny because people love they change, they move forward, but they don't love to be changed.
Yes.
I'm curious about your experiences, how to facilitate that in a way that everybody can be the driver of change.
So I think the language that you use is very important. And I think that, there's the concept of leading from behind, where you might have the vision of where you think it's going, but perhaps you ask questions and get people to answer them, and those answers are where you want the organization to change to, So if it becomes their idea, if they realize through their own understanding that this is where the ship should be sailing to, and you're just steering it from the back, but they're really leading it, then you can have the organization, or as much of it, move forward. It's much easier to run a small company when it's just you and a couple of other people, and you can sort of hash it out. But as it grows and it becomes bigger, it's more difficult to get that buy-in. And I think it's easier if you have people come up with those ideas, or let them bake it on their own. And then, you support that movement forward through what they've realized. And so it's much easier than you just pushing ahead, and hoping that everybody will follow behind you. Sometimes it doesn't work. I tried it.
Do you know the book, Turn the Ship Around?
I do not know that book, no.
That's a wonderful book by General McChrystal. And so he was one of the best, I guess, Navy sergeants, and he was appointed the worst submarine. And of course he does it, because that's what you do in the military. You say, of course, how can I serve? And then, so he went to this team, and the motivation was low. what we would call the culture and performance was very low over months. And he changed the complete culture with just doing two things. That's why I love the book. He never talks change in the book, but he turns the ship around really by doing two things. First, the reporting system. He's not the one asking for reports. He walks with them through every single piece of the submarine and says, okay, tell me what's the status and tell me what's your plan. I'm listening to your plan.
Yes, empowering people.
Yes, and the second thing, he had one structural intervention. Every sentence of this report must end with, I intend to.
Yeah.
So you cannot tell what's not wrong and then stop there. You can what's not working and stop there. You cannot ask for permission or ask for whatever. You own that part of the ship. So your sentence has to be, I intend to do da da da, and then it's your part. And then of course your superior might intervene or might suggest something or might discuss with you, but you run first.
Yes.
And these two interventions over a month, every day, turn the ship around.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. It's a great example. And when you asked some of the questions ahead of the interview, it was difficult to pick only the one thing to focus on. But I think what you brought out here, the point of culture, the most important thing that a CEO or a person running a company is responsible for is culture. And I think that most people don't realize it. And the further the culture of the organization takes upon itself the culture and personality of the leader. And the funny thing is, it takes the bad habits first and then only the good habits, but it takes all of them. And you can see how the organization is functioning as a function of the personality of the leader. And I always try to when I talk to companies that I help in my consulting part, I tell people, if you ever see those shows where where they try to train the dogs and the dogs are misbehaving, ultimately the dog trainer trains the owners. And it's very similar to a company that's misbehaving or that's not working in a certain way. You usually end up having to train or to change the way that the CEO interacts with a company, to change the culture down, because people in the company know very quickly, they realize what they can get away with, what they can do, what's the minimal amount of work they have to do, what will you accept, what will you not accept, and that's how the company begins to function from that point and on. And so the example you gave was wonderful because it created personal accountability, and empowered people. First of all, told them that what they're saying is important and meaningful and somebody's listening to them, but also gave them the power to affect that change, which is the most important thing.
I don't have a dog. I was thinking about my kids and how much they shaped me. So my first hunch was 50-50, we shape each other, but there might be a point there. They might be creating their father, creating their mother, and pushing us to grow much more than we can educate them or stand in the way, basically bringing forms in where there is actually no need for forms, and protecting where there is protection needed.
Yeah. And sometimes you end up reliving things that you've gone through your own childhood and haven't quite finished. You end up going through it again with your kids.
With every kid again. I thought, okay, that's done now. But then new kid again, every single phase of the infancy. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So that's improvement, continuous improvement, but also change. Can you share a little bit about your work? Who works with you? How do you work?
So, in the non-pandemic times, I have my small biotech company that I have a partner there, but we're doing early research. So at times, like right now, we have a tech who's doing some work for us at one of the national labs. And then I have a consulting business where I basically work with mostly CEOs, entrepreneurs, usually early stage companies, but also with advanced companies on many of the things that I've done in the past, running businesses, improving strategy, etc. And that's at those times I'm at different places, different times, with different companies. And often I work as a sounding board with companies and CEOs. When you want to change strategy, the last thing you want to do, is talk to your employees first. You want to bake it internally, and you need to talk to somebody about it. So that's usually when I come in and we have discussions about things like that. And then I spend a lot of time also running our angel investor group. We have, it's a large group, 50 plus members. Within that, we have a steering committee that sort of helps us with like a board. So we run a lot of things by them and get their input in terms of how the organization should shape and change, and react to market conditions and what we should do. So between all those things, you stay pretty busy.
Beautiful. Where can people stay in touch with you, read more about you?
You can, I guess you could look at my consulting website with bluecactusconsulting.com. Also, our work in terms of our angel investor group, you could look at bioangels.net. And then you could see our activities, the company we invest in, and how to get involved with the group. We also have a sidecar fund. It's interesting. One of the things that we're doing in our group is that our members, the only way they can become and stay members is by being active. And it creates it for a very dynamic organization, but people have to show up to meetings, they have to participate in diligence, they have to voice their opinions. We want to hear what you have to say. That's why you're there. But there are a whole bunch of people who want to be able to invest in the area that we're investing in, because our members are coming in mostly from within the industry. There's a lot of expertise, but there are people who either don't have the time or the expertise, or they live too far away, etc. So we created a sidecar funds for people to index our investments. It's sort of a passive fund that people could basically, if we take the chance on something after doing our own diligence and putting our own money into it, it allows people sort of passively to index our activities. So that's another one of the things that I manage. So the sidecar fund also has a website as well, which you can reach through the BioAngels site as well. So those are probably the best ways to reach me.
Beautiful. What did you recently change your mind about?
I had a hard time with that question. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if big changes happen like in suddenly, whoops, I make this big left turn. I think it's a series of a lot of little turns that constantly keep happening. And so I don't recognize them necessarily as a big change that happened. I just think that I recognize that everything I'm involved with is an evolutionary process. And I'm always looking to see how things are changing and just follow it or enable it. So I don't know if I've changed in my mind dramatically about any one thing, but I change my mind all the time about everything, as I evolve and try to see where things are going and try to stay with it or ahead of it or try to guide it.
Beautiful. Is there anything I forgot to ask?
No, I think it's a good, it's a great discussion. We talked about some important things which will change, and also I think the culture of the company and how you affect it and how the company takes upon itself the personality of the leader. I think those are important points, and I know that you want to have points that CEOs and leaders can take away from a discussion if they spend the time listening to a podcast, that they take something away from it. And I think it's important for people to recognize, to see the personality of the business in the business, their own personality in the business, and how it everything affects that way.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for being on the show. Come back soon.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks for inviting me.
Bye-bye.
Avoid trying to do thousands of things that doesn't work. We have 274 templates for your business success. Reach your ambitious goals with one-on-one sprint coach. We double your revenue in 90